I follow the law. I follow a law the way it's supposed to be. I never thought to stay here without papers. I had visa. I travel every few months back to the country, to Slovenia, to stamp the visa. I came back. I applied for the green card. I applied for the citizenship later on after many years of green card. So I went by system. I went by the law. And you should do that.
Melania Trump has often referred to her own life story when defending her husband's fierce opposition to illegal immigration. But political reports, some racy photos published by the New York Post, are raising questions about Mrs. Trump's immigration status when she first came to the U.S. to work as a model. Melania Trump says she came to the U.S. in 1996, but according to the New York Post, the photographer who took those risque pics says the photo shoot happened in New York in 1995. The photographer told the Washington Post that Melania, not yet married to Trump, was not paid for the photo shoot. And that is important, because if you get paid for a job in the U.S., you have to have a visa that authorizes you to work here. Now, this gets a little bit complicated, but try to follow along. There are many different kinds of visas that immigrants can have, including long-term visas that let you stay and work, and short-term tourist visas that typically don't. And the Trump campaign has not offered a definitive answer to which kind Melania had. Now, Melania's former modeling agent told the Associated Press that, yes, she had the kind that lets you work, and that he secured it for her. Now, that backs up her story. But Mrs. Trump herself has said in interviews, as you just heard, that she went back and forth between the U.S. and her native Slovenia, which you don't have to do if you have a work visa, but which you would have to do on a tourist visa, which would explain, or could explain, why Trump is saying that Melania modeled but didn't get paid. Does that make sense? Mrs. Trump responded to the controversy on Thursday, tweeting, "In recent days, there has been a lot of inaccurate reporting and misinformation concerning my immigration status back in 1996. Let me set the record straight. I have at all times been in full compliance with the immigration laws of this country, period. Any allegation to the contrary is simply untrue." That from the campaign. Now, joining me now is Nathan Lerner, Executive Director of the Democratic Coalition Against Trump, PAC, Democratic strategist Simon Rosenberg, and Julia Iapia, contributing writer for Politico. And I first want to set this up before I go to you, Nathan, as to why this is important. Just on its own, Melania's life history and her modeling history really, I don't think, should be an issue in the campaign. However, her husband is both a birther, who demanded that the president show his birth certificate, who questioned whether he got into college in reality, whether he was even qualified, and who also has come down really hard on this idea of illegal immigration. This is Donald Trump's position on visas. He says, "I will end forever the use of H-1B as a cheap labor program and institute an absolute requirement to hire American workers first for every visa and immigration program, no exceptions." That was his position put forward as of March 3rd, 2016. Do you know, and is your organization able to tell us whether or not Melania had the very thing Donald Trump is trying to get rid of, an H-1B visa?
We don't know yet. That's why we filed the FOIA request. We wanted to get to the bottom of this and find out the truth and see what her visa status was at the time.
And what prompted your super PAC to file this request for information, this FOIA request for Melania Trump's immigration status?
We saw the article in Politico questioning her visa status, and our mission is to hold Trump accountable, point out his hypocrisy, and put him on defense whenever possible. So we saw the opportunity and decided to act.
And Simon, is this a right area for Democrats to explore? Because look, if Donald Trump was married to is married to somebody who herself exploited the immigration system, how ironic, right? And is there a way to keep this alive without, I guess, sort of trying to shame Melania Trump? But I mean, I'd say her husband is a birther.
Well, and she, by the way, actively participated in the birther efforts. There's video of her saying that she didn't think Obama's birth certificate was real. She's actively supported the anti-immigrant efforts and said all 11 million undocumented immigrants should be supported. She's fair game here. I'm sorry. I mean, she has backed some of the worst parts of his anti-immigrant policies. And even in that interview, she was very clear that she was not like those people, right? And the truth is, we don't know what happened. They have to release the immigration file. It's the only way we're really really going to know. But based on what we know, it's possible that what she's done is far worse than what an undocumented immigrant does. Being undocumented in the U.S. is not a crime. What she's done could be a felony. She could lose her citizenship. These are serious matters. We deserve to know the answer.
Well, and Julia, I think that is, Simon just puts it pretty plainly, and it's a pretty damning case if that's what she did. Is this somebody who is essentially a hypocrite, who is setting herself apart from the immigrants that her husband is attacking through his campaign, but who are self-exploited the system?
The answer is we don't know. It looks like there's good grounds for very strong suspicions, but like Simon said, we don't know. We have to see the immigration file. The answer lies there, and until we see it, we don't really know. But it is interesting, again, Melania is an interesting person. I kind of feel bad for her. She's an intensely private person. She didn't sign up for this when she married Trump. She was not, she tried to dissuade him from running for president. She's intensely uncomfortable by the public scrutiny. On the other hand, she did support her husband's claim that Obama may not have been born in the U.S. She did say, I followed the law and these people didn't. So I don't know. She's fair game, but but you just made the case for her being fair game, right? I mean, I think if in fact she did sign up to be with her husband, right? The other sort of subtext, I think, of the Trump campaign, when they're going after immigration, they're not going after every kind of immigration. A couple of things. So first of all, we've got the statistics on unlawful migration in the United States. People who essentially overstay their visas. They come in. Look at Canada. People from Canada overstay their visas far more, almost more than twice as much as people from Mexico. Brazil, look at Germany on there. Look at the UK, China, India, Venezuela. So you have people from all over the world who fly into our airports, come here, overstay their visas. Now I want to play you what a Trump supporter at one of his rallies had to say about the difference between the way essentially Donald Trump and his supporters see one kind of immigration, people who overstay from, let's say, Europe, and people who overstay or come undocumented from Mexico.
I'm fine with Europeans coming here.
Okay, Europeans, but not who?
Europeans are killing us. A terrorist knows to say.
I'm pretty down with Western civilization. So.
Okay.
Nathan, I mean, so I think it's pretty clear that Donald Trump, who is married to European immigrants, has no problem with certain kinds of immigration. The focus is always on Mexican migration specifically.
Yeah, I mean, that was a very racist statement, and I think it sums up Donald Trump's views very accurately and is very reflective of how a lot of his supporters feel. And our mission from day one has been to call them out on that, and say either you support Donald Trump in those kind of statements, or you support Hillary Clinton and the Democratic Party. And it's as simple as that. There's no gray area.
Yeah, and one more little bite from a Trump supporter, and this was an answer to a BuzzFeed reporter, as was the last one, about whether or not, if Melania Trump actually exploited or misused the immigration system herself, whether it would bother Trump supporters. Take a listen.
It wouldn't change my opinion one way or another. I mean, if we look at it, we still haven't come to the conclusion whether Obama was born in this country or not.
Okay.
And so now we're going to pick on Trump's wife, but when Obama's gotten a pass for these last 8 years.
Simon, I mean, that's what we're dealing with on the Trump supporters.
Yeah, well, there's 2 points. One is that Mark Krikorian, who's one of the leaders of the restrictionist immigration movement in the United States, tweeted out on Thursday that the Trump campaign should release her immigration file, that he had concerns about what he had read in the Politico piece. And so this was a leader of the restrictionist movement calling Trump out to come clean on what happened, because it's concerning to them. They're a law and order, group, right? The anti-immigrant groups in the country. The second thing is that, she's really, I think that we're going to see her over the next few days. The story that broke last night is that she also may have lied about how she got her green card, and that's going to become a second wave of this story that is going to be very concerning, because it raises into basic fundamental questions about whether or not Donald Trump, rather than having created common cause with all these millions of people who struggle through this immigration system, knowingly, right, demonize them. And it says so much about who he is, right? Instead of creating common cause with us and say we got to fix the immigration system. He's demonized these folks for his own political advantage. It's another important piece of what we know about him as a leader now.
And Julia, lastly to you, I mean, just as a journalistic matter, it is, in a sense, incumbent, don't you think, on journalists to explore this, because Melania Trump has made herself a figure in the campaign between the plagiarism issue, her own stance on unlawful migration, putting herself forward as sort of the better version of what immigration is supposed to be. This is something journalists are going to keep exploring, I assume, right?
Oh, of course. And we at Politico are working actively on this. We have really 4 or 5 reporters working on this. I know that's the case at many other journalistic outlets, the Washington Post, the Associated Press. She's been a cipher. I wrote about her back in April in a magazine profile. The only kinds of interviews she had given before were to these kind of fashion channels, and she did kind of a few interviews for places like People, but they were puff stories. They were about, you know, what her favorite accessory is and how she raises her son Barron. But there's very little known about her, and people have been digging, and we're going to continue to dig, even though the Trump organization doesn't really make her available and is not very transparent. And even though Trump supporters then try to intimidate in really hateful ways reporters who excuse me, do try to dig into it.
Yeah, well, I'll ask Michelle Obama. The potential first ladies do get looked into it. In Michelle Obama's case, it was pretty vicious.
Hillary Clinton.
Hillary Clinton. Well, yeah, there you go. Case in point. Thank you very much, Nathan Lerner. Please keep us up to date on how your FOIA goes. And Simon Rosenberg and Julia Ioffe. Thank you very much. And up next.